Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. It is those who know little and not those who know much who so positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. A man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. If I had my life to live over again, I would have made a rule to read some poetry and listen to some music at least once every week. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. I have steadily endeavored to keep my mind free so as to give up any hypothesis, however much beloved, and I cannot resist forming one on every subject as soon as facts are shown to be opposed to it. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. It is impossible to conceive of this immense and wonderful universe as the result of blind chance or necessity. We stopped looking for monsters under our bed when we realized that they were inside us. I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. I cannot persuade myself that a beneficent and omnipotent God would have designedly created parasitic wasps with the express intention of their feeding within the living bodies of caterpillars. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. Even people who aren't geniuses can outthink the rest of mankind if they develop certain thinking habits. How paramount the future is to the present when one is surrounded by children. A moral being is one who is capable of reflecting on his past actions and their motives, of approving of some and disapproving of others. Besides love and sympathy, animals exhibit other qualities connected with the social instincts, which in us would be called moral. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation. Keep steadily in mind that each organic being is striving to increase, that each at some period of its life has the struggle for life and suffer great destruction. The war of nature is not incessant. The vigorous, the healthy, and the happy survive and multiply. The most important factor in survival is neither intelligence nor strength, but adaptability. The world will not be inherited by the strongest. It will be inherited by those most able to change. It is not the biggest, the brightest, or the best that will survive, but those who adapt the quickest. One general law leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely, multiply, vary, let the strongest live and weakest die. As man advances in civilization and small tribes are united into larger communities, the simplest reason would tell each individual that he ought to extend his social instincts and sympathies to all members of the same nation, though personally unknown to him. This point being once reached, there is only an artificial barrier to prevent his sympathies extending to the men of all nations and races. This preservation of favorable variations and the rejection of injurious variations I call natural selection or the survival of the fittest. In the long history of humankind and animal kind, 2. Those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Man tends to increase at a greater rate than his means of subsistence. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. On the ordinary view of each species having been independently created, we gain no scientific explanation. False facts are highly injurious to the progress of science, for they often endure long, but false views, if supported by some evidence, do little harm, for everyone takes a salutary pleasure in proving their falseness. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. I love fools' experiments. I am always making them. I am turned into a sort of machine for observing facts and grinding out conclusions. Such simple instincts as bees making a beehive could be sufficient to overthrow my whole theory. Everything in nature is the result of fixed laws. Nothing exists for itself alone, but only in relation to other forms of life. Man selects only for his own good, nature only for that of the being which she tends. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. What a book a devil's chaplain might write on the clumsy, wasteful, blundering, low, and horribly cruel work of nature. We can allow satellites, planets, suns, universe, nay, whole systems of universe to be governed by laws, but the smallest insect we wish to be created at once by special act. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. Animals, whom we have made our slaves, we do not like to consider our equal. The more one thinks, the more one feels the hopeless immensity of man's ignorance. Free will is to mind what chance is to matter. I see no good reasons why the views given in this volume should shock the religious views of anyone. We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man with all his noble qualities still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin. It is a cursed evil to any man to become as absorbed in any subject as I am in mine. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that, whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved. Blushing is the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed by the Creator into a few forms or into one. My mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding general laws out of large collections of facts. Man is descended from a hairy, tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in its habits. The young and the old of widely different races, both with man and animals, express the same state of mind by the same movements. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. We are always slow in admitting any great change of which we do not see the intermediate steps. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I, for one, must be content to remain an agnostic. The survival of preservation of certain favored words in the struggle for existence is natural selection. Building a better mousetrap merely results in smarter mice. Share your favorite quote in the comments, and let's inspire each other.